so let's do this. All right, so Sankofa Animation Network exists to uplift Black and Brown communities through animated film, faith-centered storytelling, and creative education, building a global community where underrepresented voices are nurtured, empowered, and seen. So our African proverb for today is tales are the food of the ear. And today our focus is on inspiration. I'm going to turn this volume down here. All right, so let's get back into our inspiration for week 1. Okay, so inspiration is the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, particularly regarding creativity or action. It is that spark of a brilliant idea or the driving force that motivates you to turn concepts into reality. A creative spark. This is another form of inspiration. A sudden brilliant intuition or idea that helps to solve a problem or sparks the desire to create, such as painting, writing, or building. A guiding influence, a person, event, or piece of work that encourages you to be better or provides foundational ideas for your own projects. And I got these from Cambridge Dictionary and vocabulary.com. So you might find different ways that these words are defined, inspiration, but it's going to have the same general meaning. So inspiration is that spark, really, that makes you want to make things, that makes you want to create art, that makes you want to draw, that makes you want to paint, that makes you want to tell stories. All right, so the first form of inspiration we're talking about today is folklore. So many stories come from folklore, so many ideas come from fantasy, stories that are passed down verbally, stories that are passed down through families in our schools, talking about myths, fairy tales, and all that lies between, such as mythical creatures like elves, fairies, magical godparents, big bad wolves, Trojan horses. All of these things come from folklore and they're passed down, and it's going to be a continual source of inspiration because you know what? We never get tired of these kind of stories. They're kind of indwelled within us. And I think that these types of stories really, I don't know, for me, they make me want to create. And I think a lot of us, they make us want to watch too, because they kind of cater to our inner, like our core. Like these are like really storytelling at its core. It's like all about our innate desires, all about finding love, all about feeling a part of something important, learning valuable lessons. And I just think that folklore never gets old and it's always a source of inspiration. So the questions that I have for inspiration for this week are: what subjects, themes, or ideas do you find yourself returning to again and again in your work? Subjects, themes, and ideas that you find yourself returning to again and again in your artwork. So that's one question to think about while we do our first set of poses. And the next one, I don't want to give them too quick, but just going to give them both side by side. What kinds of stories naturally grab your attention? So those are really good types of stories that naturally grab your attention. And I'm going to set these for 5-minute poses. So I'll go ahead and kind of split my screen here so I can do some sketching as we kind of think about those two questions. And let's go ahead and set our timer. We're at 5 minutes here. All right, so I'll go to the first one first and kind of brainstorm how I think. The types of themes or ideas that you find yourself returning to again and again. One thing that I noticed with this is you might not even realize it until you look at your work and you kind of see for yourself the types of things that you created. Like I thought I was doing like one sort of thing mostly, but when I went back and I look at my work, I'm like, you know what? I am doing other things that I didn't even realize. One of the things that I didn't realize I was doing was that I really made a lot of stories about children, or I really enjoy telling types of like children's stories or coming of age type of stories. I always knew that I always liked fairy tales, and I think that can kind of coexist, like telling fairy tales and telling stories with children in them. But I didn't even realize how much I think it's a part of my own um childness, I could say, or my own sort of sense of that always almost always kind of feeling in that childish, curious wonder mindset of just like, oh wow, like what if mythical creatures could exist? What if you can go on these types of adventures and explore these places that you've never been to and kind of meet all types of curious personalities. And I just kind of love the idea of being able to explore with the curious mind of a child. And I think that type of storytelling excites me and makes me want to engage in the storytelling process. Another thing I always find myself going to is stories about animals. I love like drawing animals. I love animals themselves. I love the curiosities of their personality and how they kind of how they so many different types of animals will have different ways of living. Like there's different types of birds that will, mate for life or they kind of raise their kids together. I think that's so cool. Like the penguins will take turns hunting and things like that to feed their chicks. And I just think animals are really interesting. And so I always find myself drawing them a lot, even from when I was a young age until now. I still draw a whole lot of animals. And I just love animals in general. I just think that they're fun to draw, they're fun to make stories about, and they're always for me a source of inspiration. The kind of, let's see, themes. I think that's kind of in the same realm of themes. If I could get into more about themes, I really love fantasy. I love like the idea of fantasy, and that's I think what I did more so with JD's story because that one is definitely not a kid's story. It's much more of a young adult story. But I think that that story itself was really very highly inspired by the idea of fantasy, the idea of going out on adventure. I think this kind of in the same realm as like when I think of like the children's stories that inspire me to create. But in a way that makes it a little bit more, you can when you're doing young adult, I think there's more room for like the scariness or like kind of like dealing with the more challenging emotions than with children's stories. I think that was maybe what one of the things that made me want to make that story for young adult instead of children is just the idea that I can explore some more challenging emotions that I was feeling that I felt inspired by through my the dreams that I'd had about the main character or the dream specifically about the main character that made me want to tell like, all right, this is not a for kids story, this is a young adult story, but it's still like a it's still in a sense a very much a coming of age type of story. Let's see, the kind of stories that naturally grab your attention. I love stories that make the unbelievable believable. I think stories that do have things that feel like there's no way that's possible, but you feel completely engaged at the same time. Like that could happen with any type of story. I'm not particularly huge on oh, and we missed our 5 minute timer, so we'll go to the next pose. Uh, and I'm not even huge on like fantasy type stories. I mean, not I am huge on fantasy stories. I'm not huge on like superhero type of stories, but if a superhero story can really grab my attention, um, or like make me believe that's what's happening can happen, then I'll be really invested into it. I think one that does that really well for me are like the Batman series. I know Batman doesn't really have superpowers, but oftentimes he deals with very much super uh super challenging situations, super super villains, even though they might not have superpowers, they're like incredibly calculating and menacing and hard to capture in many instances. And I really like the idea of this guy in Brooklyn. It feels like Brooklyn, in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, in New York City, who's, capturing these crazy bad guys who, in New York, anything can happen. And I think maybe that's part of what makes it believable is if you live in New York, it doesn't feel like any of it is that out of reach just because of how crazy things can be in the normal. What else? Uh, what was the question again? I'm going to look at it one more time. The kind of stories that naturally grab my attention. Another type of story that naturally grabs my attention is things that deal with, I mean, anything that deals with real human emotions. I really like stories that are less told. I like when you can get a woman's perspective. Um, there's this one show that I enjoy a lot, and it's the Game of Thrones spinoff, and it's House of the Dragon. And in one of those, she's taking over the kingdom, and hopefully, I'm not spoiling anything for you, but she's taking over the kingdom, and in essence, she begins her period on the same day that she has to go and sit on the throne and for the first time and make a bunch of rules and orders, and it's like it's uncomfortable, and they do a lot of things that are like women related, like childbirth and even like death during childbirth, and just it feels like there's a lot of the woman point of view in this series, a lot more than in the first original Game of Thrones. It felt like it was, I enjoyed it still, but it was definitely like felt like it was more catered for the male gaze, if you know what I mean. But this one feels like more like there's more of a woman's perspective, and there's more of like an understanding, and um sometimes that can feel forced or like cheesy if it's not done well. It could feel like, this just feels like, they're pushing this a little. It feel so, you know what I mean? Sometimes it can feel like you can feel it if it's not authentic, um or if it just feels like it's just put in there and it's not really like what the writer's intent necessarily was. But in this story, it feels like it just flows. It feels like it's part of it. It feels like it's supposed to be that way. It feels like it was written by women who wanted to have these feelings expressed, and I appreciate that. Let's see. Other types of things that inspire me, other types of stories that I gravitate to. I really love anything that has a bit of suspense or tension, or I think that's a lot of the reason why we like to go and tell stories and go to see movies, is to have that bit of fear in us, that kind of it wakes us up in many ways. It kind of, wakes up the norm and kind of shakes things around. It's like, okay, oh, this is what's going to happen here. I'm not, I feel very scared for this protagonist here. I feel nervous about what's going to happen to them. And yeah, it can just, I don't know. I just think those types of stories are really fun to see if we see them in the natural. Let's see other types of stories that I find can gauge my curiosity. I do enjoy a family film if it's what's the word? I prefer a family film that feels like it doesn't dumb down the process. Like it doesn't dumb down the storytelling process. I think kids are really smart and perceptive, and you can have a strong story meant for kids. You don't have to make it horrifying. I think some movies traumatized me as kids that weren't meant to. Like like Pinocchio, and when his friend is turning into a donkey, that felt extreme. But there are stories that don't feel that way, that feel like they are smart. Like first thing that comes to mind is like the Lion King, like Simba's facing a death of his parent, and and we see the dead body, I mean, that's pretty intense. But at the same time, it's real emotions. He's feeling it. He feels responsible for his father's death, and he rejects his what is it his right to be king. So I think those are real deep emotions, even though you're doing it with animal characters, and you're doing it um with comedy, a lot of comedy thrown in there, but there's smart ways to do um deep stories even for children's entertainment. And I think when they do it and they're not so afraid to do something that's like a little bit uh, pushing the limits, I appreciate that sort of thing. I like that type of storytelling. I like that sort of excitement. I think when you're a kid and you see that sort of thing, it makes you like kind of love movies. It gives you like an excitement for movies that I did for me for sure. Like it gives you an extra, like, I mean, I think kids have all the same emotions that adults do. It's just, and they're able to perceive a lot that we don't even realize unless you look back on your own childhood and you're like, hey, when I was that age, I was pretty perceptive. I knew what was going on in many of the times, even if I didn't say anything. So I'm gonna make this portion of the rabbit a little bit better fitted, or the hair, I should say. Okay, so there's my hair. And let's see. I'm gonna draw the tortoise as well. I like this. I was trying to find a good image of the tortoise and the hare, and I couldn't. Like all the ones that had them together are were AI generated. I didn't want to draw that. Um, and surprisingly, I'm not against AI, but I I don't. I just, you know, I'd rather. I don't want to draw what I want to draw. I don't want to draw. And some of these are AI too. I think both of these ones are, but they don't feel so AI-y. AI could be a word. Um, yeah. I just sometimes I just want to sketch, you know, without the whatever the hell. All right. I'm running out of time talking. Let's see. I also enjoy um I love a series. A good series is good. If you can find a series nowadays, I feel like they're a lot better than what they used to be traditionally. I mean, I think the mini series that they had, like even in the 90s or the late 80s, were pretty good. But I think that drama series as a whole have gotten um, immensely better in the last years. I really think that they've gotten their standards have gone up quite a bit. Probably even more so since COVID, and a lot less people are going to the movies, and movies are getting more and more. I think movie makers are just, or the corporations behind movie makers are just so afraid that they are pushing these ideas that they think are no risk ideas, but they end up being high risk because that's what happens when you try to predict too much. I think you kind of sabotage yourself. When you try to predict too much what the market's going to do, then it's like, people don't want to see the same thing remade 50 times, even though you think it's a win. Eh, and sometimes I think maybe the audience does, you know, perpetuate that with 5 million different Minion movies. and people keep going to see them. But I mean, if you like the Minions, that's cool. But I don't know. I don't want to see the same thing 500 times unless it's a series episode of Game of Thrones. All right, let's see. Let's keep going. All right, so we're gonna do this is our last set of images for uh, folklore, and these are also AI. I'm sorry. I don't know, the rabbit in the hair one just looked really bad. But these ones, I mean, everything on Pinterest, sadly now is pretty much AI. But anyway, I thought these were still pretty realistic looking, and they look photographic, and they're not like animation images or cartooning images. So that way we can kind of make them what we want them to be, which I think is fine. Hopefully, you don't mind. All right, so let's see what we can do with this Jack and Jill. Not Jack and Jill, I'm sorry. Hansel and Gretel. Hansel and Gretel here. It's one of my favorite folklore stories, my favorite. I'm trying to do double tap on a Cintiq. That's not gonna work. Folklore is is a big thing for me. So just like the Hansel and Gretel, I painted a Hansel and Gretel once. I might go back into doing that. I think that it's really fun to do those types of images. And I don't know, those types of stories just don't get old to me, especially the ones that haven't been made yet by the Disneys. It just feels like it's more, even more so like, what can I do with that? What can I take a story like that and change it up and make it into something else? I think I might want to do something like that. Just put like a spin on it, because it doesn't have to be exactly how the original one was. And it was made so long ago. I mean, if you look at the way that Disney redid like Grimm's fairy tales and um, the way that you might have seen even some of what are the other ones? There's another set of folklore for fairy tales that are done. And and they're done differently than the way they were originally written because people want to have creative freedom, and you can change it for the new age, or you can change it for whatever you like, really whatever your imagination can think of, uh, and make it your own story if you'd like to. So I love that option, and I just think that it is there when people want to play with it, especially if you're new at writing and you're maybe have a little bit of fear, anxiety about writing. You can look into some fairy tales and folklore because it does give you some creative freedom to kind of give it a remix while also allowing you to create something new, you know, without having to come up with a complete idea on your own. So you still have the ability to kind of, you know, not have to start completely from scratch because I know that can be intimidating for some people. Unless you're taking the sketch to story class, because then then of course it's going to be a lot easier for you and you're not going to have to worry um about being afraid or anything like that. So, all right. So, let's go ahead and keep drawing. So, I'm drawing Gretel here. I think in every version, Gretel is the older sister. I don't think I've read any version where Hansel is older and Gretel is younger. I think it's always that Gretel is the big sister. But that could be a twist. It could be, I mean, that might be a simple twist, but that could still be a twist that Gretel is the little sister and Hansel is the big brother. That could be something that you can try if you'd like to. All right. All right, let's keep going. One thing that I find cool about these types of stories is the idea that that you can kind of push the limits, that you can kind of push things and you can still make it kid friendly. I mean, it doesn't always seem that. I think a lot of these stories were initially meant to scare kids. I mean, I think they were. And maybe sometimes they're just meant to uh I obviously a lot of them are meant to teach kids as well, but I think too it's like, oh dang, put the eraser. I was trying to get the right expression on her face. So that's, and I did run out of time for this one, but I just want to get her just the frame of her body in the picture so that it's not complete loss. Because I mean there's a witch trying to eat these children. That's pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. And you can probably connect all kinds of different metaphor for that, with I don't even I don't even know, but you can like some of these tales are really, really super dark. And I think that makes it kind of cool because I think a lot of times in scary movies and things like that, most of the time or traditionally, they kind of shy away from including kids or like they don't want it. They feel like, oh, that's too far. But I think it's kind of exciting that you can kind of push. You don't have to be so stiff with storytelling. Sometimes you can actually be like, whoa, like what would happen if these kids were in danger? you know, they do. I mean, you are the writer. You can still make them get away, but just putting them in that situation, it's like, wow, that's pretty scary. And I think people are not used to seeing that sort of thing because I think it is more of a risk, but at the same time, I think risk and storytelling are important. I think they are because how can you really get to like the real core stories if you're not willing to take any risk to try and tell some stories that are a little bit harder. Definitely, I did that with JD's story, just made it a little bit, push the limits a little bit. But I don't know. I think that kind of story can also be a little bit refreshing, especially even for kids people who have experienced difficulties in their own childhood. It can kind of be a sense of validation or like, yeah, my childhood was really scary. And this witch that's trying to eat children is actually a metaphor for how I felt in some way. So it can be validating for people if you do it right. This is something to think about. Okay, so let's go to the next post. And we're talking next about the inspiration of nature. So, nature is also a great source of inspiration. You can get so many ideas from nature. So many films are made inspired by nature. I mean, when you think about Jaws, uh, in places in real life places like Tombstone, Arizona, Mount Everest, Madagascar, like this movie, The Deep Blue Sea. It's like all of these things, elements of nature, creatures in nature. It's such a great source of inspiration. So don't shy away from nature. Nature is a great place to get inspiration from. I find it super inspired when I go out into nature, if I'm hiking, if I'm on a trip somewhere, even just taking a road trip, just looking out the window. And even when I go to the zoo and I'm seeing creatures from different parts of the world, I feel super inspired. I'm like, oh, this creature, this critter, this crawly thing could be a character. This weird looking animal could actually be a character. So you can actually think about places as locations for stories, as what would it look like if something went wrong here? What would it look like if someone changed their life in this location? What would happen if someone was stuck in this location? You think about that movie, out what is it called? Outcast, or like the movie with Tom Hanks and he's stranded on a desert island. Like you could be in Jamaica and just like be like, you know what, this is a beautiful island, but what if it was completely deserted and I was stuck here? And like, that could be a whole story. So locations, nature, animals, um, the elements, all of these aspects of nature can be great sources of inspiration. So we're going to do a couple of poses about this inspiration. And so the questions I have for this one are there particular places, memories, experiences, or people that frequently influence your creative work? And the next one is, I'm gonna put my phone on do not disturb. What is something you're deeply curious about right now? So what is something you're deeply curious about right now? And are there particular places, memories, experiences, or people that frequently influence your creative work? All right. So, all right. So we have this first location, and it's the real location. Let me fit this on the screen. I'm gonna take the rulers off of my Photoshop. And this is Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And so let's see, let's think about, I like to make a little frame for myself whenever I am drawing a landscape. It helps me to keep it contained and um, not worry too much about the boundaries. So let's see. What are there particular places, memories, experiences, or people that frequently influence your work? I am definitely inspired often. I think I said this before. I'm inspired often by animals and nature. I I became obsessed, and I'll admit this, with ravens when I moved to California because I'd never experienced them before. I never seen a blackbird that was so big. And at first I didn't, at first I just thought they were crows. I didn't realize that there was like this other animal. And I saw this giant blackbird and it had a rat like a mouse in its little talon and it was like eating it. And I just was like, wow, this is like a little eagle baby. I know it sounds silly, but that's kind of what I thought. I was like, this is like a little bird of prey. This is like a whole like a hunter animal. I was just like, and I granted you might have already found the rat or the mouse. It was a mouse, I think. It wasn't huge. It was a mouse, but it was a pretty big mouse. And you might have found it dead already, but the point is, it fascinated me. It looked like it was an eagle with a fresh catch, and it was this big blackbird, and I saw the way that they fly and they soar with their wings out. And then I started to learn more about them and how to tell the difference between a raven and a crow. And I know I got a little bit. And I got obsessed because the ravens, they're so smart and they make these noises that crows don't make. They make like these chirping type of noises, and they make these other loud, like almost like a honking type of sound that crows don't make. They can do the cawing, they can do that, but they also have a lot of other sounds and they can even mimic humans and other animals like parrots do. And they're actually um many might say even better than parrots at mimicking because they're really, really accurate. they sound like exactly like what they're mimicking, and I think it's so cool. But anyway, that's one thing in nature that I got like super inspired by and decided to make to create a character out of this type of animal. And even when I started to dig more, I was like, can I make this relevant to the type of stories that I want to tell, like as a brand and as a someone who's trying to connect to their culture and trying to connect to the continent of Africa? How can I, keep this character and do that? So I did a little bit more digging and I did a little bit more research. And what I discovered is they have African ravens. And I thought that was even cooler. I was like, whoa, I didn't even know they have, and they look different, but they're just as smart and they're very big too. They're very big and they have like this uh little, like, it looks like a little, they're wearing a white bandana because the back of their neck is white. And they actually have two different types of ravens that have that. They're the African white neck raven, which is the one that I fell in love with. And then they also have this other raven too. It's called a thick-billed raven, which lives, I think, in like off the in Zanzibar or like somewhere like way off the coast. But they both live in Eastern Africa and they're both like really cool animals. And actually use this location, Mount Kilimanjaro, because I found out they have them over there on the border of Tanzania and Kenya. And I thought that was like another cool fact that I didn't know. So, are there uh, people, places, memories, experiences, and I'm going to include as people like animals, yes, that inspire me, of course. Another thing that inspires me is the location. This location inspires me. I was started getting very curious about Africa and learning more about it, and got inspired by it and wanted to tell stories about this region or in this region. And so I let it become a place and a source of inspiration for me, and just have learned a lot more about it, a lot more than I used to know. And JD's story is made out of the mythical version of Kenya. And I have in my little um what would it be called, my little spin-off about her little brother Bendelli. I have that raven show up, and I'm even thinking now about having the raven show up in future versions of in future books for JD's story. I'm gonna have a little Easter egg of the two ravens that I made are Chippy, who is the young baby raven, and Cronky, who is the adult, more serious raven. And both of these two ravens are in my stories, and I just am excited to create them. And yeah, I just love these birds and I love the location. And speaking of locations, this is also a location I found really inspiring for me. Yosemite is, if not my favorite, it's my favorite. I can't even say it might be my favorite or it's my second favorite. Yosemite is my favorite place on the planet at this, like, that I've ever been to. It's my favorite place on the planet. I love Yosemite. I feel so good when I get there that I actually feel depressed every time I come home. And it's like like you're going there to feel better, like to feel good and to feel encouraged. But I always kind of have a little bit of a downward slope when I come back, because I'm like, I just want to stay in Yosemite forever. I just love it so much. It's like nothing you've ever seen in life before. It doesn't even feel like it's a real place. It's like, okay, I died and I went to heaven, and heaven is Yosemite. That's what it feels like. It's so pretty. It's like supernaturally pretty. That's how I feel about it. It's just like you go there and you can't even, some of those locations, like when I saw like those streams, if you go in the springtime when the streams are heavy, it is, and the water is just like crystal clear. It's incredible. I mean, I almost don't even want to talk about it because I still want it to stay. Like I don't like I heard it was super crowded. I think it was Memorial Day, and I was like, oh no, I want it to be like nice and quiet. It's never, I mean, a lot of people already know about it, but it's so pretty. It's just so dang pretty. I just want to stay there. I wish I could live there, become a forest ranger. Actually, I should find out how I can become a forest ranger there. I would. I think I would be. I don't want to clean the public toilets or anything, but I would definitely be a ranger there if I could be. It's that it's just that peaceful to me. It just you talk about peaceful and like being in nature and being in a place that gives you energy and like just a sense of like what's this was a word? Yosemite said, all right, I've sold Yosemite to you. If you haven't been, um, you should definitely like I've been to many beautiful places. Like I've done road trips around this whole country and not even I was expecting like the Grand Canyon to be like my alpha omega, which Grand Canyon is beautiful, but it's nothing like Yosemite. I mean, it's really not. That's just that's just me being honest. What else? Other places that I find inspiration or people. I think sometimes too, like our childhood memories can bring us inspiration. I do feel inspired to tell stories sometimes based on how I felt, not only how I felt as a child, but the types of people that were around me as a child makes me want to tell stories for better or for worse. Um, but yeah, I think that memories can be inspirational for us. They can be, and they can really give us some good encouragement. I almost feel like I want to color this, but I don't think I have time. Maybe I'll just give it just a little tad of color. And let me just see if I can do this. Yeah, I'm just gonna give a little bit of color. I might, yeah, run out of time, but I'm just gonna stay here for an extra minute or two and just give it a little bit of color because Yosemite, that's why. Let's see. When you also think about other places that give you, I'm gonna look at that question that the second question that I asked so I can answer that one because I haven't answered the second question as of yet. I want to get to that. Let's see. The second question is, what is something you're deeply curious about right now? All right, so something that I'm really curious about is actually writing. I'm curious about writing. I'm curious about the writing process, especially as I've begun um, digging even more into it during the class. Just wanting to be able to talk about storytelling with other people inspires me. It makes me want to, it really makes me want to learn even more or like have more conversations, I think. Conversations make me feel good. Conversations inspire me and they make me want to um, they made me want to create. I feel more inspired to create when I'm around people who are interested in that creation process. And I think that whole process is really, I don't know, energizing for me, energizing in a way that just, I don't know, like I don't feel fulfilled without it, if that makes sense. Like I just want to tell the stories. I want to be around the people that tell the stories. I want to collaborate with people to tell stories. Like all of these things inspire me. All right. I'm gonna try and find another answer for that question. What is it? What is something you feel deeply curious about right now? Hmm. I've been more and more interested in bee stories. I did a couple of videos on the YouTubes, or I made like a video on YouTube, and I did a couple of subsequent shorts about it, about bee stories. And I didn't realize how interested I was in bee stories until I started talking about it. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm really curious even more about bee stories after starting talking about it. And like, it made me more curious about the concept of, because it makes you so much more invested in the story as a whole. It brings the audience in. And I think what I didn't even realize too is like things that bring the audience in also bring you in as the writer, because I don't know, there's something about making something that feels engaging that makes you feel even more excited about it. It's like, oh, people are gonna love this. Like there's something that feels even more like, I don't know, it brings like a different light to it, I think. I think it just makes you feel like, oh, like makes you think of how you can do it even better. And that feels pretty good. I like that process quite a lot. All right, I'm going to let that go. I only have a few more minutes to continue sketching. So let's do it. I like this little Yosemite sketch. All right, so let's see. I'm going to name that layer. So I have those two together. And let's see, this is Monument Valley. If you've never heard of it, it's on the border of Arizona and Utah, and it's beautiful. If you haven't heard of it, I'm sure you've seen it before because it's in a lot of movies, especially the old Western movies. Valley, I actually know a lot more about it now because I'm married to a man who is half Navajo and half Lakota. So he is Native American, and Monument Valley is actually on Navajo reservation. So it's on Navajo reservation land. And there's actually a lot of secret places within Monument Valley. And it's obviously an ancient ancient piece of land. These I have no idea how long these rock formations have been there in this format or in this version, but these rock formations have been around for I can only imagine centuries, you know. They didn't form overnight. They've been here for a long time. So these rock formations are really cool. I don't, they look like they described, and I think I don't know if it's just like Navajo that described it that way, but they're described as like these little mittens. I never even thought of that before. My husband told me that, you know, they're shaped like mittens or like gloves. But when you look at them, you're like, oh, they do kind of look like clubs. But it surprisingly can get absolutely freezing here. I always thought the desert, especially the dry desert, well, all deserts are dry, but you know, like the Western desert, American West, I always thought it was like super hot, always. No, it gets super cold. Like I felt wind there like I've never felt before. Like I couldn't even stand being outside. That's how cold it got. Just like super windy cold and just frigid air, like a refrigerator. Very cold. But it's still super beautiful. It's actually a really big park. Um, if you are of Navajo descent, and well, you have to have what's called CIB. It's a certificate of Indian blood. And if you have like the Navajo, you can get in for free. Any places on the reservation. So a lot of natural national parks are actually on reservation land is one of the things that I've learned. So obviously, if you're indigenous, you get to these places for free. But what's cool about that too is like these places have a history. These places have a culture. They're not just beautiful monuments. They're, part of indigenous culture. And if you're curious about that, you can learn more about that. And you can actually talk to people from that culture and learn more about it. Like if you want to tell stories, you can, and you can do so without appropriating. You can tell authentic stories by talking to people, and you can include your own culture and like having the curiosity. So one thing I learned too is like you can tell stories about yourself learning. That's one of the things that I didn't even realize you can do. You can tell stories about, being someone that's curious and wants to learn about cultures. And these do make really good stories. And you can write also nonfiction. That's something that sometimes people don't realize or don't um always see, the idea that you can tell stories about um and you can write scripts about nonfiction stories. Documentaries have scripts, and I think we don't always notice or realize that right away, but it's very true. Because you're trying to teach a message. So even if it's a true message, you're teaching from real life, but you're still like the point of a documentary is you're trying to get a message across. So you still are, deciding what the topics of conversation are, who you're talking to get certain perspectives, and you're making those types of decisions. Okay. Our last pose we are doing under the sea. So I found this oceanic pose. It's actually the Great Barrier Reef. So I mean, I chose some pretty cool landmarks because I think like, these are places I guess where, you can probably get the most inspiration. These are places where probably hundreds of stories have been told, and the amount of stories that can still be told with these types of locations is limitless because there's really no limit to how many types of stories you can tell with this. I mean, when you think about like the Great Barrier Reef, Monument Valley, Yosemite National Park, like Kilimanjaro, like all of these places, that you can tell a million stories with these, just with these. All you have to do is like, all right, this is a place. Who lives here? What's the problem? Basically, if you just think about it, like simplify it. Don't make it complicated. Don't make storytelling complicated. All right, what am I inspired by that I can that I can talk about for a long time, or I'm willing to learn about and talk about for a long time? I'm willing to talk to people who know a lot about this thing. What is it that is making me feel inspired? What is it that is making me like, want to tell a story? Um, Whatever that thing is. And if it's a place, all right, you have half of your problem solved right there. All right, what is it? It's this Great Barrier Reef. Who lives there? It could be a little sea urchin. All right, like once you have like the first spark of your imagination, like you can think of a million different characters. You can think of, all right, maybe it's a sea urchin, maybe it's actually a coral, and it's like a coral that has feelings. And we don't talk about it a lot, but corals are living creatures. What if this coral like has little eyes and can talk, or maybe can talk, or like you can hear its thoughts, or maybe it just expresses things um like visually in some way. Like it could express its emotion by changing color. Like all it takes is a little bit of imagination. Once you get that spark, you can keep going. You can let yourself get inspired. Let yourself think outside the box. Let yourself explore and be curious, you know, because there's so much. I want to see. Let me see this a second. Let's see. Can I see? All right. Let me just make sure that okay, just checking everything, making sure everything works. All right. So get inspired, allow yourself to be inspired, and let your kind of imagination go. Like, what is it that can, what kind of character can I create in this setting? What kind of character would want to live in this setting? What if it's like an octopus? What if it's a diver? You know, what if it's a mermaid diver? I don't know. Like you can make up for yourself a million ideas just by having a little bit of a spark. So allow yourself to get that spark. And I think you can explore in a lot of ways just by allowing yourself to have that spark. Okay. All right. So let's see here. I'm just kind of doing some rough little things here, but I'm making this little world, you know, I'm making this little world bit by bit and just letting it and letting my imagination kind of have at it, which is what you want to do. Want to let your imagination kind of have at it and just kind of flow, which I hope that you are letting yourself do. So let your imagination go. Let's see, little fishies. You can always use fish. There's not only one. I mean, look at fishtail. I mean, really, like the just the ocean, and they just made a whole story about, you know, being in the ocean and being a fish, and they made this character. And once you give your character your personality, you can come up with anything. We're gonna talk about that in some secret workshops. Today is really just about getting that initial inspiration. But once you have your inspiration, it gives you all the freedom to think of a character. And once you know your character, you can make any story you want. Okay, so let's see. Just making some more fishes here. Some more fishies. Some little bubblies. I love this. This is fun. You see, like, I don't know, I feel like you can do a lot with just even just this. You can figure out and do a lot of, you can find a lot of inspiration just with something like this. And that's the Great Barrier Reef. Okay, so closing assignments. I have a challenge for you. Okay, so let me go ahead and save this and bring this a little bit bigger. So my challenge for week 1, choose one of the following: a piece of folklore from your own culture or country of origin. You know, like my own culture. Like I did this very intentionally because we're automatically predisposed to certain fairy tales. Like all of us know Grimm's fairy tales. All of us are, you know, we know Aesop's fables. We know like Mother Goose, but every single culture has specific folklores, fairy tales, myths, legends. If you don't know, Google is your friend. Google is your friend. So, what are folklores from? You can say uh, China, you can say Thailand, you can say Middle East, you can say Egypt, you can say, if you're like me and you're like African American, you can say like what are folklore from the continent of Africa, and it will show you, it will give you a list. Actually, I have a couple of books now because I didn't know that before, but once I started researching, I found a ton of them. And actually, Nelson Mandela put out a book about African folklore. You can find that on Amazon. If you're from South America, I met a girl from El Salvador, and she told me this really cool story from her country about this like little a trickster character. So if you don't know, so many people don't know the myths from their own culture. So that's why I want to challenge you. If you're American, there's myths from here too. Like if you're just like, I'm just American, I don't even know where my ancestors came from. I would challenge you to find out where your ancestors came from. Or if you're indigenous American, guys, you know, you have myths from here. Find those myths, find those legends, find those folklores. And the second option is a mythical creature. So, I mean, that could be stemming from that folklore. I mean, you have Bigfoot, you have fairies, you have goblins. You can use a mythical creature from wherever you fancy. The next option would be a location you wanted to travel to always. So maybe you always wanted to go to Australia or New Zealand, or maybe you always wanted to travel to Istanbul. Like, okay, so that could be your inspiration. Maybe just start looking at pictures from that place. Go to Google Earth and you can see a million images. So let that be an inspiration for you. The next thing could be an animal that you find fascinating. It could be your favorite animal. I love ferrets. Ferrets are my favorite, and I love ravens. So I told you guys, I love ravens. You could be, it could be a regular dog or domestic cat or domestic cow or whatever. So an animal that you find fascinating that you would want to tell a story about for a long period of time. All right. And you're going to answer these three things. So just choose one. Okay. So of those four options, just choose one, and you're going to answer these three questions. You're going to name the inspiration. So you're going to write it down. I mean, there's one thing to have it in your head, but write it down. And the second thing you're going to do is what specifically caught your attention. So, what is it about this place? What is it about this animal? What is it about this story that caught your attention? Okay. So, you want to think about that and you want to write it down. Make sure that you capture it on pen and paper or at least on text because the act of writing it down makes it real. Okay. And the third thing that you're going to do is name three adjectives that describe the emotion, mood, feeling of your inspiration that brings up that you would want to share. So name three adjectives that describe the emotion, mood, or feeling that your inspiration brings up that you would like to share. So if you choose like a red panda, so I would choose the emotions that it makes me feel that I would want to share is awe, curiosity, and maybe even just joy. Okay, so those could be like three feelings that bring up for me. An adjective would be playfulness or like exciting or what is the word? Another word. Enthusiasm, something that describes your those emotions that inspiration brings up that you want to share to the people who you're sharing your art with, your audience, basically. So I have this QR here. If you're not already a part of Sankofa Animation Network on what is the app? Discord. Please go ahead. You can download this. And I have a channel. It's called Event Art and Photos. So in that channel, you can share the drawings from this week that you did, and you can also share your week one challenge. Okay. So make sure that you download Discord and you join Sankofa Animation Network. That way you can share your challenge and your drawings from this week in event art and photos. Finally, Sketch to Story Creative Writing for Visual Artists is now on Kickstarter. Yes, so if you enjoyed this was barely a little sneak preview of the types of content that we get into there. We really deep dive into like what inspires you, what you've written stories about before, what you've drawn before. If you've never written a thing in your life, you don't need any experience. You just need to have an imagination, and hopefully you enjoy drawing because there's a lot of drawing involved. So definitely we're going to explore what you've been drawing in your past, the types of things that get you excited about drawing. And we're just going to start to put adjectives to those. We're going to start to put words to those. Like, what is it about this thing that inspires you? What is it about this character that makes you want to create content about them? Even if you don't know how yet, it's just going to get you into first, what is that driving force that makes you want to create? And then we're going to go through the stages that are going to get you confident in telling stories. So this is the QR for the VIP. There's very, very limited spots available. So, I mean, it's super discounted. It's more than half off. Plus, I throw in my books. I throw in 3 books. So, like, really, I'm like basically giving this away. It's the course less than half off, Plus, I'm giving you Making a Graphic Novel in JD Story 1 and 2. Plus, you're getting a sticker too. So, I mean, basically, this is the lowest you're ever going to get it. If you don't want it, you don't got to get it. But I'm just saying that this is beyond a great deal. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I had so much fun doing this workshop. I'm doing 7 more workshops beginning today. But every Saturday, all summer, I'm doing these workshops, sketch to story, creative writing for visual artists. You just have to sign up. And you can visit me anywhere on my website, on my Instagram. There'll be links. If you haven't uh, yet had the link, you join. If you either on my website, if you join my mailing list, you'll get the link. Or if you go to meetup.com and you look for Sankofa Animation Network on Meetup, you will find the link for these workshops. So definitely you want to join. You'll see the links on my Instagram, on my Facebook. So make sure you join. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you rate this podcast 5 stars because you love it so, so much. And I will see you guys again very, very soon. I had so much fun hosting this. And make sure that you scan this. I'm going to give you one last final chance to scan this QR. Like I said, is literally a couple of spaces left for VIP. It's gone. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me in this time. And I will see you again very, very soon. Until I do again, be grateful, live balance, and be yourself. Bye bye.